Hello, Luke Michael Howard, clinical hypnotist and owner of Hypnosis here. And today I'm here with a very special guest, my client, my friend Daryl here today, and he's graciously allowing me to interview him and give you a little bit of a case study as to what I've been helping him with over the last year or so. So, how are you, Daryl?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much for having me today.
Thank you. Good to have you here. So I'm just curious, like, well, everyone else is curious. I know why you're here. But what was it? What was your problem coming into this? What were we working on, you and I?
Well, for me, I was introduced to you first because my son was is a baseball player and had some trouble overcoming some mental obstacles as a pitcher. And you worked beautifully with him. And that's when we first got introduced to you, and you helped him out, and it was an amazing experience for him. And how we started working together was I was diagnosed with cancer, and I knew that there was going to be surgery, chemotherapy, radiation involved, medication involved, and I wasn't sure how to prepare for it. They don't prepare you for it, and right away from our first few sessions, it was an opportunity for me to accept what had happened, but also work through how chemotherapy and radiation was going to work. And I was very lucky. And even post radiation, post chemotherapy, post surgery, you've been extremely helpful in getting my mind right.
Thank you.
No
And
problem.
I know that when you got this news
Mhm.
a while ago, about the cancer and what have you, um, you know, the powers that be, they'd recommended counselors,
Mhm.
psychologists, other
Mhm.
therapists that were offered to you, but you decided to work with me. I wondered, because a lot of people would figure, oh, there's a counselor that's been offered by the hospital, there's a
Sure.
psychotherapist that's been offered, yet you decided to work with me around it. I'm just curious why that was.
I'm actually happy that I started working with you, and no, nothing against the traditional ways of working with a psychologist or psychiatrist. I felt that they were going backwards and they weren't helping me with what was going to be coming ahead. And it was more for them about how things felt when I got my diagnosis and trying to understand how my feelings were, which is great. When I worked with you, it was this is you were going to work with my subconscious to move forward. We were going to figure out how we're going to get you ready for radiation, how we're going to mentally prepare you for chemotherapy, and not be afraid to do so, and how you're going to get ready for a very tough and possibly a worst case scenario, like could have been a deadly surgery. And a traditional doctor can't get you through that. And you help me mentally get ready for surgery, and you help me mentally get ready after surgery, and then mentally get ready for chemotherapy and radiation. And then now that I'm off of it, you know, how do we work forward post that? And with all the MRIs and all the scans that come forward now, a doctor wouldn't be able to scratch the surface because I'm no longer afraid or worried or have any tension or anxiety or pressure about that. It's just been in my mind, it's a roadblock that's just been overcome.
Amazing.
No
So
problem.
for me, when we work together, I'm like, everything you can do to become cancer free,
Mhm.
I'm on board with it. So you decided to get the chemo.
Yep.
Absolutely. You went with the surgeons, the
Hmm.
doctor's advice for sure. Radiotherapy, I'm like, yeah, let's support you to go around this. So, whatever you can throw at this in order to, have a better quality of life. I was all about that. Coming from a hypnotist. But oftentimes, when you do you remember? I remember, like you shared a story when the surgeon or doctor had told you about the options that were available psychologically
Hmm.
for you to deal with this, and you said, "Well, actually, I got a hypnotist to work with."
Yes,
Do you remember what their response was?
they were. It was non-traditional, so they were questioning me about who was it, how do you know this is going to be good, what this is a little bit outside the box. This was the first they'd ever heard of it, especially for somebody who had a cancer like mine. they were very unsure, and they kept on asking me, "Are you sure this is what you want to do? Are you sure this is the road you want to go down? We've never heard of anybody, do this before. We highly recommend you stay within the hospital." And ultimately, we take control of ourselves. And yes, obviously, I did the chemotherapy, and I did my radiation, and I've done all the medications that they've asked me to do. I do some all the pills that they asked me to do. So on that, I'm fine. To see somebody to even watch what I'm eating, I've done. But the hardest thing that we do is we live in our bodies with this brain that's telling us yes, no, have tension, have anxiety, be fearful, be careful. I saw how you helped my son overcome this obstacle and his adversity, and it was fixed. So for me, it was, well, if that could work with him, how could I try that? I'm more interested in that. I want to fix not being afraid to take chemo or radiation or the pills. And then after you have chemotherapy with all the changes that happen to your body, how could I overcome that so I could still look in the mirror and still be happy with myself?
Yeah, it's because you think of someone getting cancer, right? Like, well, do everything the doctors say because they're the experts. I'd recommend that too.
Hmm.
They recommend chemo. It's probably a good
Hmm.
idea you do it.
Yep.
Radiotherapy, probably a
Yep.
good idea that you do
Hmm.
it, right? These are the experts. But then, so you're looking after other people in a similar boat, are doing everything they're told what to
Yeah.
do. But then there's all these emotions that come up, like anxiety,
Hmm.
fear,
Hmm.
limiting beliefs like, oh, am I going to be able to make it through another day? How am I going to get through this? And they're all valid. Um, but there's not a lot of stuff that people do to do what's really spoken about, how to psychologically deal with
Hmm.
this kind of diagnosis in your life. It's like, let's cut it out, let's give you the chemo. But what about all the emotions? What about all the
Hmm.
trauma? What about all the negative beliefs? And yeah, I just don't think a lot of people realize that aspect, but you were on that straight away. Like you did all the traditional stuff, but you're like, how
Right.
do I actually deal with what's going on inside, as in the
Sure.
thoughts and feelings?
Yeah. I get this a lot, but they say you're pretty positive for what you go through. And I always say, well, I have a secret weapon, and you've been my secret weapon, and I share that quite often to people. We all will have some type of tension, anxiety, pressure from just the day-to-day life of just living. Having a cancer diagnosis and going through radiation and chemo certainly adds to that burden. So, and if you have a family, or even if you don't have a family, it's just life, and life's tough, and you have to be able to wake up in the morning and then go to bed at night through the bookends of your day. And amongst all the stresses and complications that we have, I needed some clarity, and I needed to just strengthen my mind. Like I needed to strengthen my brain to the point where I knew that when I was going into radiation every day, that it wasn't a chore, or I wasn't being dragged there, that this was my job, and this was my game. This was my uh, championship to win, as we did. And when even through chemotherapy, this is my championship to win. And going through a cancer center where everybody's sick, that you can walk through the halls being mentally ready to be like a champion. It's hard, but it's possible. And you just
Yeah.
have to have a clear mindset and be ready to work with you and know that this is something you can overcome.
Now, I'm not sure how much your son had told you about the work that we did together, but obviously you saw the changes in him. So, and you can be honest with me,
Mhm.
that. But what was your thoughts on hypnosis, mind coaching, whatever the hell it is that I do,
Mhm.
initially coming into it, and you're going to go through the process? What were your views on
For
hypnosis
me or for my son?
for you?
For me,
Yeah,
well, I as an adult, you have this crossroads of, well, I'm already trying all this different medicine, so I'll give it a try. I think that there's some skepticism because you go like, oh, I could probably mentally, overcome this myself, or is it going to work because we're on Zoom and we're not in person? And I didn't know. I did not know. I thought one of my questions was, do we have to be together? You said we could be on Zoom, and I was like, all right, I trust you. You're the professional, and I, it worked. And I think that you just somebody have any type of hesitation, it's natural to have hesitation. I think that's only common. And to have some type of like, okay, is this going to work? But when it does work, and then you go through your battle, whatever that battle is, and I know some people have maybe addictions or they've got smoking or drinking. In my case, it was, can I get to radiation chemotherapy? Can I overcome this negative connotation of cancer? Can I overcome it? Can I beat it? Can I do it? And then when you do it, and throughout the first and second sessions, going, I feel better. That word doesn't scare me. Something's different. And then your family and friends going, well, I'm noticing a change. What's different? And then you talk about it, then you know it works. And that's when the skepticism goes away instantly.
How would you describe the whole experience of working with me?
It's a good question. Fluid. And I say fluid because it was easy. Your ability to just say like, what I can't control what's in the past, I'm able to work on the what's going on inside your brain, and then we're going to work through that. It was quite easy, but it's on us to have an open mind. It's on us not to fight back, because I think that if you resist, then you're not going to get the full experience. But what I noticed was that working with you, just it helped. And when you're going and battling a chemo and a radiation and having to take endless amounts of pills, it's hard to do that. And then it becomes easier and then easier to the point where it's not hard anymore. And that's when you realize everything that we've been working on works. The second part about it to me is you give homework. And if you don't do your homework, then it will still be a battle. But if you say, try these things and you do it, and then when you find yourself in a situation where you're not feeling great or you feel a little low that day, and you remind yourself, oh yeah, Luke gave me some homework, and you do it and you feel better, that helps as well. And I will also remember that before our first meeting together, you had said like, watch this video, and I did, and that helped just open up my mind to things. But until you're in it, until you do it, until you feel better, then that's when you'll know for sure.
How would you typically feel after a session? So you and I have worked together, our session's done. How typically would you feel at the end of it, like when we're done?
I think a lot of times I tell you it's like I just had a massage. Like my shoulders feel loose, my neck feels loose, and I feel happy. I feel and we could be entering a session for many different, like you have a long day, kids have been picked up, I meet with you, things go on in your work day, and I see you, and then it's like you just feel good. That pressure is fixed, that knot is untied. But I'll often tell you that like I feel like my shoulders are looser, and I'll feel much better. And it's hard to explain, but your mind feels clearer, your mind feels better. There's no brain fog. That pressure, that anger, that problem that you had because of your diagnosis or whatever you're going for, it just, for me, it felt better at the end.
And how long have you been cancer free now?
That would be just over 17 months, 18 months.
It's amazing.
So yeah,
So, like, when you think about where you are now, what are you most looking forward to in the future?
question. Being with my family. That's what I want. And my friends. Being with my family. Understanding that, we live this life and it's just fast paced and there's always something to do. But once in a while, you got to press that pause button and think about the people that care about you the most, and be with them and give them back that same love and caring that they were with you when you're sick. And that's what I look forward to the most. Sure, some people say travel and some people do other things, but for me, it's just being around the people that love me the most.
Of all the stuff that we did, we've done a lot over the last year
Yeah.
or two. But what would you say if you can remember? what was the biggest shift in anything that we did together, any work that we did together, the biggest shift for you from where you were to how you are now?
It's a great question. I don't know if I could summarize it in just one thing. So
That's
for
okay.
me, um, the initial diagnosis was hard to understand, and that took a strong session to just realize that it happened.
Yeah.
And I noticed that my family shortly after said, "Well, you're something's different," because I was able to accept it somehow working with you. And then another key moment or milestone for me was when going for radiation was no longer something to be worried about, or doing chemotherapy was no longer something to be worried about, or being worried about having an MRI was no longer something to be worried about. Um, those are milestones, but they're also key things because it takes time to just overcome those moments. So for me, there's things that I remember that we would work on. Um, I don't, I can't remember it all, but I can, for obvious reasons, I can't remember it all. But I know that I can remember what you did, but I also can't remember how you did it in those sessions.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough. You remember certain high
Yeah.
points and stuff. Yeah, that's normal with hypnosis. Um, and like, what would you say? Actually, no, there's another thing I want to ask you. Like, kind of a statement I want to make. It's like oftentimes two analogies, right? You think of, cancer, it's a purely physical thing.
Mhm.
Go and do the radiation therapy, do the chemotherapy, but that's it. How's hypnosis going to help with that? You can't just click your fingers or pull out your magical wand and make it disappear, right? Like, Luke, are you saying you can make cancer disappear? No, of course not.
No.
That's why you got doctors and surgeons.
Mhm.
What I help with is all the stuff they don't deal with, all those icky emotions and limiting beliefs, fear, anxiety, worry that are there. Helping to deal with that. It reminds me of a story at my MMA club the other day. Someone's like, "Oh, can you make me the best MMA fighter, mixed martial arts fighter in the world?" I'm like, "I can't make you the best fighter in the world. I can make you believe you're the best fighter in the world." So
And that's what
whereas
this is.
those guys have got trainers that will help them deal with their combinations or their submissions, I'm not there for that. I'm there to get their mind right. I'm not
Mhm.
there to cut that stuff out of your brain or your body. That's what the surgeons do. I'm just there as, like you say, the secret weapon to all these emotions that no one taught you how to deal with it when a
Right.
bomb got dropped on you,
Mhm.
how to deal with all that stuff and navigate through it so you're strong,
Right.
you get out the other side, cancer free, and there's no residue of these emotions. It's like, oh, I've dealt with it physically and I've dealt with it emotionally and
Mhm.
mentally as well.
People get diagnosed with cancer all the time. It's unfortunate. But then you have to leave the doctor's office and then live your life. And that's where you helped, is how do I live my life knowing that I'm going to be going through physical changes, mental changes, mood changes, sleep changes. There's going to be all these changes that are going to happen once this starts.
Yeah,
It's a starting block to a race, and you don't want to start that race. But working with you, it helped me know that I can go back to work once I was okay to do so.
yeah,
Um, I could go grocery shopping. I can go do things with my kids, and I can live a life and be happy. And that's all we want, is that hopefully before we see you, we're happy. And if there's a diagnosis that twists things that we weren't expecting, how do we get back to being happy once again? And that's what you helped me do. Is I wasn't unhappy, but you surely don't want to live with cancer, and you're going to do everything your doctors say to do. You're going to eat right. You're going to get your sleep. You're going to take your medicine. You're going to do your radiation. You're going to do your chemo. But then you have that burden of, am I going to get really, really sick? What happens if I get really, really sick? What happens? And you were able to eliminate the what ifs. And that's what helped me the most.
yeah,
I don't want to be living in a life of what ifs anymore. It's just now I'm able to live my life, and what happens happens, And it sounds weird, but this is from somebody who's been working with you for a while. And I know that this is possible to have a positive outlook. So, no, you can't cure cancer. But there's things that you were able to do alongside what the doctors are doing to help get my mind right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would, like I say, always recommend that you're in a similar situation, do everything the doctors tell you to do, but be
Right.
careful of the suggestions they give you sometimes as well. When your defenses are down and they're giving you suggestions that are there and you're vulnerable and your unconscious can pick that up. They're well-meaning most of the time, but when you're in a vulnerable state, that's
You,
why they train EMT people that, pick people that have been hit by a car and they're dangling, on a highway somewhere.
yes,
Teach his EMT that when you go there, you don't just go, "Oh my God, your guts are on
right.
the pavement." No, they go in there, and even if you're half past dead, they're like, "Oh, there seems to have been an accident. We're here to help. You're safe. Everything's okay." They're trained linguistically to keep that person because if your guts are hanging out, you don't need someone telling you, "Oh my God, no, you're already in a state of shock."
Right.
You need,
And that's true. Yeah,
yeah,
I was in a state of shock. And you're vulnerable,
yeah,
right? And you don't know what to do. And they say, we've got all these people at the hospital that are able to help you. And they give you pamphlets. And you're dealing with this unbelievable diagnosis that you never thought you were going to get. And now you're looking at pamphlets and they're saying, try them all. So, of course, you're going to try them all because that's what they do. But I felt like that was going to be a very slow process, and I never wanted to go back to that day ever again. And in my first meeting with them, what they did was, let's talk about how you felt when that happened. Well, I know how I felt, and I don't want to go back to how I feel that day.
yeah,
So let's not.
yeah.
That was an automatic no for me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. And if there's anyone watching this that's on the fence about getting hypnosis for anything, whether that be to
sure.
get them through cancer, through an addiction, anxiety, any problem, but they're on the fence, they're not quite sure, like, this sounds good, but maybe Daryl's a hired actor. By the way, are you a stooge? Are you a hired
No,
actor? That we've
no,
been working this angle for a while now. It's an
no.
elaborate story. Like some people think that, right? But for people that are on the fence, that they're in a dark place,
Mhm.
whatever it is, they know of me or they know of hypnosis, but they're kind of on the fence. Should I get some help? Shouldn't I? What would you say to people that are on the fence about getting some help for whatever the issue is?
You got to try it. That's like you got to try it. I went through a lot and I had my skepticism, just like anybody would, but you got to try it. Because when you try it and then you feel better, that's when you know it works. And that's what people need to do. You have to do an intake, you have to have I guess, a meeting with you. But after your first session and you do the homework, it works and you feel better. So I'd say try it. You should definitely give it a try. And if you don't know what you could probably save yourself on something because we're probably only all seeing you because of a reason, for whatever that reason is. But we're if you think you could fix it yourself, you probably would have already done it. And I don't think we all have the mental strength to do it. But what I felt you did was you were able to like somehow get in my mind and just use a pencil eraser to erase those negative feelings. So if somebody is going through something and has an addiction, sports athletes, mental block, however you are able to help somebody, my recommendation is try it because it could save your life, and it quite possibly will, and you'll feel much better after doing it because the traditional ways aren't always set up to be the most successful. And there's people that I think go to therapy for years and years and years and could probably do 4, 5, 6 sessions with you and just be on their way. So if you're like looking to cut your time in half, but also feel great about yourself, that's not a bad thing either.
Thank you. Is
No
there
problem.
anything that I have not asked you, or anything that you wish that I did, or anything else that you would like to say before we wrap it up? Put a
Sure.
bow on this.
Huh. Um, you know, these you when you're doing sessions with you have to continuously come to it with the same open mind every week that you did in your first session. And if you go and you do it, you will feel better. And my other recommendation is you explain why you're there. You go into detail because you're not a mind reader and you're not a magician and you're not a therapist, but you're there to help. So if you spill the beans and you explain everything that you're going through, all the feelings, why you're there, when it started, and you go through your the full thing, you're able to get a diagnosis and then you're able to prescribe where that will certainly help. And I feel that anybody who doesn't believe, you try it, you go in with that open mind, you clear your head, you tell you all the reasons why you're there, and then you're very quick to adapt. And what I found was you would sit back and go, okay, give me a second. This is what I'd like to do. And it and I was very lucky for you to say, let's work on this. And then what I also appreciated was you would say, okay, last week we worked on this. Well, how are you on that? Do you want to keep building? Maybe we should continue building. I'd like to keep building. Or next week I'd like to do this. And I don't think all the other doctors or other people that are out there would necessarily care because they're almost like they're one of many. And I always felt that I was one of one working with you.
Awesome. Well,
No
thank you
problem.
so much, Daryl. Really
No
appreciate
problem.
the time.
No problem.
Hopefully, the right people watch this, hear it, are inspired by your miraculous transformations in health.
Thank
I
you.
know I have been. So, as always, everyone, I've been Luke Michael Howard, clinical hypnotist and owner of Hypnosis. Hypnosis, always believe.